There's a conversation you've been putting off. You know exactly which one. You know who it's with. And if you're honest, you know roughly what needs to be said. You've run through it in your head enough times already. What you've been waiting for is the moment where not having it gets harder than actually having it. Today is that moment. This morning, Mercury and Jupiter formed an exact trine, which means the words you've been reaching for, they're here. Clear, direct, findable. Not a perfect script, just the actual sentence. At 1:10 p.m. Eastern Time, the moon moved into Scorpio, and everything you've been quietly carrying started feeling heavier by the hour. And tonight, at 10:38 p.m. Eastern Time, Venus squares Pluto exactly, the transit that pulls the real structure of a relationship out from underneath all the careful arrangements you've both been maintaining. That's the lineup. That's what today is. Here's what most people miss. The hardest moment isn't 10:38 p.m. tonight. It's the moment somewhere this afternoon when you realize the words are ready and you've got no excuse left. That feeling, being completely out of reasons to wait, is its own specific kind of uncomfortable. The dread of the conversation and the dread of not having it finally weigh the same. And then the second one gets heavier. In the next few minutes, you'll see three things clearly. What Venus square Pluto actually surfaces, and why it's never what you expect. Why today strips away every excuse one by one in order. And what's actually on the other side of this conversation. Why the timing of having it now matters in a way it won't a week from today. You know what needs to be said. Tonight is just the night it stops being optional. You've been carrying this for a while. Not dramatically. You're not unraveling over it. It's more like background noise that never fully turns off. Something already running when you wake up at 3 a.m. before you've even consciously decided to think about it. Something that hums underneath regular conversations, regular days, regular everything. You know exactly what it is and where it lives. There's a person, and there's something between you and that person that hasn't been said out loud, not to them anyway. You've said it plenty of times inside your own head, in the shower, in the car, lying awake at some point when sleep wasn't coming. You've rehearsed it, refined it, started sentences and finished them to no one. You've had the conversation a dozen times already, just never with the person it's actually about. And here's the thing. It's not that you don't know what to say. That's worth sitting with for a second, because most people avoiding a hard conversation have convinced themselves it's a timing problem, or a readiness problem, or they need to find the right words first. But you already know what you want to say. You've known for a while. The delay isn't about the words. It's about what happens after the words leave your mouth. What changes? What can't be taken back? That's a completely different problem. You're not waiting for clarity. You have clarity. What you've been waiting for is the specific moment when staying quiet costs more than speaking, when the weight of not saying it finally tips past the weight of saying it. Today, that scale tips. Not because you decided it would, because three things landed between this morning and tonight that changed the math, and the first one already happened. Here's what today actually looks like, piece by piece, because it's not just one transit tonight. It's three things arriving in sequence, each one removing a different excuse. The first already happened this morning. At 11:28 a.m. Eastern Time, Mercury formed an exact trine to Jupiter. Mercury is how you think and how you speak. Jupiter opens things up, cuts through the tangles, makes things cleaner. When these two connect like this, words that usually feel just slightly out of reach come in straight. You know the feeling of starting a sentence and watching it come out sideways, not quite landing where you meant it? Today is the opposite. Today, the sentence goes where you aim it. And this was the third time these two planets connected this way in recent weeks. They've been cycling in and out of this alignment for a while. But this morning was the last pass. The specific clarity this combination gives you, the ease, the directness, that's done for this cycle after today. It's not coming back in the same form. If you've been waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel like the words are finally there, this morning was that window. The words were there. Which means by mid-morning, I don't know how to say it, was already off the table. The second thing happened at 1:10 p.m. Eastern Time. The moon moved into Scorpio. Scorpio doesn't let things sit comfortably below the surface. The stuff you've been managing quietly, keeping contained, holding just slightly out of view, it gets heavier under a Scorpio moon. Not necessarily louder, just heavier. Like it takes more active work to keep it in than it used to. You might feel it as a tightness when something in an ordinary conversation accidentally grazes it, or a sharpness that comes out of nowhere, or just a specific kind of fatigue, the tiredness that comes from carrying something you're not putting down. By mid-afternoon today, staying quiet was costing noticeably more than it did this morning. Both excuses gone. The words are there. The weight of not using them is building by the hour. This is actually the hardest part of today, and it lands before 10:38 p.m., somewhere between noon and evening, when you're sitting with a ready sentence and a growing pressure and genuinely nothing left to hide behind. That's the moment most people reach for a new excuse. Something that needs to get done first. Something that can wait until tomorrow. Any reason to push it one more day. But tomorrow doesn't have this lineup. And tonight at 10:38, the third thing arrives. The one that makes the whole day make sense. Venus square Pluto exact. And to understand why that transit is the point where comfortable silence stops being an option, you need to understand what Pluto actually surfaces, because it's almost never what people are expecting. So what does Pluto actually pull up? People usually expect it to be about a specific incident, something that happened, a particular moment, something said or not said. They prepare for a confrontation about that, and then they're thrown when the real conversation turns out to be about something older and less specific than any single event. Pluto doesn't care about the incident, it cares about the structure underneath the incident. Venus in Taurus is your comfort zone inside a relationship, the shape things have settled into, the version of the dynamic that functions day to day. The topics you both quietly stopped pushing on, the moments you let pass without comment, the adjustments you make without even consciously deciding to make them anymore. It's not dishonest. It's just the path of least resistance that developed over time, the one both people drifted into without ever actually sitting down and agreeing to it. Pluto in Aquarius looks at that settled shape and asks one thing. Who decided this? Not out loud. Not in any conversation either of you actually remembers having. But somewhere along the way, a pattern formed. Who brings things up and who waits? Whose discomfort gets addressed first? Who does the adjusting when things get tense? One person bends a little more consistently. One person's needs quietly become the default priority without anyone ever naming that out loud. It can look a lot like flexibility, or generosity, or just being easy to be around. But it's a structure. And Venus square Pluto tonight makes that structure visible in a way that's hard to unsee. The real stuff. Who bends? Who doesn't? And here's what's worth knowing. The person who bends more usually already knows. Maybe they haven't named it exactly. Maybe they've been telling themselves it's not a big deal, or that the other person doesn't mean anything by it. But the awareness has been there all along, living quietly under everything. It's part of what's been sitting in your chest. What Venus-Pluto does tonight isn't deliver new information. It takes what you already know and makes it impossible to keep filing under, "I'll deal with this eventually." The square is friction. Two planets pulling in incompatible directions until something gives. Venus wants stability, wants things manageable and smooth. Pluto wants the actual truth of what's happening. At 10:38 p.m., those two things hit exact friction, and the arrangement, the one where one person quietly does all the adjusting, becomes the only thing in the room. That's the conversation. Not about last week, not about the specific thing that's been bothering you, about the arrangement itself, about the fact that one person in this dynamic has been doing most of the bending, and neither of you has ever actually said that out loud. And why today specifically? Why not yesterday, or tomorrow, or somewhere else in this window? Because today is the only day all three conditions land at once. Yesterday was the full moon in Libra, and what that full moon did, if you felt it, was put two versions of yourself in the same room. The version that keeps adjusting, keeps making things work, keeps finding a way to hold everything together, and the version that's done doing that. The full moon didn't hand you a specific action. It just made the gap between those two versions impossible to keep ignoring. You went to sleep last night knowing something had to move, but knowing and actually moving aren't the same thing. So you woke up this morning still carrying it. Then, Mercury and Jupiter connected at 11:28 a.m., and the thing you wanted to say suddenly had a shape. Not a polished speech, not a rehearsed script, just a clean, honest sentence that actually names what's been going on. That's what Mercury-Jupiter gives you, not eloquence, just directness. The kind that doesn't need a lot of preparation or runway. That's when the last excuse disappeared. Because up until this morning, you could still genuinely tell yourself you didn't know how to start, that it might come out wrong, that you needed a little more time to figure out the right angle. That's a real excuse. A lot of people live inside that excuse for months at a time without realizing that's what they're doing. As of 11:28 a.m. today, it expired. And that's the moment the opening is actually pointing at. Not 10:38 tonight, this morning. When the words arrived and suddenly nothing was left to hide behind. That's when the discomfort peaks. That's when the mind starts getting creative about what else urgently needs attention right now. What other thing could fill this afternoon? By the time the moon settled into Scorpio just after noon, the weight became physical. Scorpio doesn't leave space to sit comfortably with something unresolved. It just makes the cost of carrying it heavier every hour. The thing you're not saying starts taking up more room than the actual conversation would. That's the math of today. Full moon yesterday took away, not yet. Mercury-Jupiter this morning took away, I don't know how. Moon in Scorpio takes away, I'll get to it. And at 10:38 tonight, Venus square Pluto removes the last one, pretending the current arrangement is still working fine. Here's what matters about staying quiet through all of this. You don't escape Venus-Pluto by not speaking. Pluto surfaces the dynamic whether or not you say anything. The difference between having the conversation and not having it tonight isn't whether the effect lands. It's whether you're an active participant in what happens, or whether it just happens around you while you watch. So what's actually on the other side of this? This is the part people skip past when they're deep in avoidance mode, because when the whole focus is on dreading the conversation, the other side feels too abstract to think about clearly. Here's what's actually there. Tomorrow, April 4th, a grand water trine completes. 3 planets in water signs forming a triangle of support rather than pressure. Today is pressure. Tomorrow's different. The ground softens. What got open tonight has space to settle into a new shape rather than just sitting raw and exposed. But there's a specific thing about that. A grand water trine doesn't create something out of nothing. It supports what's already in motion. If something true got said tonight, if the real arrangement got named, even imperfectly, even briefly, then tomorrow that thing starts finding its footing. Whatever form the relationship takes after tonight, it has softer ground to move on. The new version of how you relate to this person has somewhere to land. If nothing moved tonight, tomorrow still feels softer, but you're carrying the same weight into softer ground. And soft ground, under unresolved weight, is just a different kind of stuck. That's not a warning, just the honest difference between those 2 days. Then, there's Venus sextile North Node, running through April 9th. The North Node is a directional marker. It shows where movement carries natural support, where things move with a current rather than against one. When Venus connects to it the way it does this week, new positions you take in relationships, new things you say out loud, have backing for the next several days while they find their shape. After the 9th, that specific support isn't there in the same form. So what shifts on the other side isn't only relief, it's timing. The conversation tonight lands inside a window where what you say has somewhere to go. You're not speaking into a void. You're speaking into the most supportive stretch of this entire month. And underneath all of that, there's something smaller and more personal. The weight of something unsaid doesn't just sit still. It spreads. It shows up as irritability in completely unrelated moments, as a distance that builds slowly without either of you naming it, as a low-grade tiredness that sleep doesn't actually fix. What's on the other side of tonight isn't only a changed dynamic with another person, it's the absence of that specific weight. That's what's actually available right now. That's what's waiting. Which brings it to the only real question left: what to do between now and 10:38 p.m. 3 things. That's the whole protocol. The first is for right now, before the afternoon gets away from you, before something else fills the space. Write 1 sentence, not an outline, not a list of everything you want to cover, not a plan. 1 sentence that names the real thing, not, I want to talk about what happened last Tuesday. That's the incident, not the structure. The sentence that actually needs saying sounds more like, I want to talk about the fact that I'm the one who always adjusts, and I don't think you realize how much that costs. That sentence, or your version of it, the one that names the arrangement, not the specific event. Mercury-Jupiter made it findable this morning. It's there. You just have to stop moving long enough to let it surface. The reason to write it down, even just for yourself, even if no one ever sees it, is that it pulls the thing out of your body and makes it real outside your head. Right now, it lives as pressure, as feeling, as weight. The moment it becomes a sentence, it becomes a fact. And facts are significantly harder to talk yourself out of than feelings. The second thing is what you don't do between now and tonight. You don't rehearse. You don't run through the conversation 100 times trying to map every possible response and prepare a counter for each one. That feels productive. It isn't. It's just a more sophisticated version of not moving. The moon in Scorpio will be adding weight through the afternoon and evening, regardless of what you do with it. Sitting with that weight while rehearsing is just doubling the discomfort without actually moving anything forward. You have the sentence. That's genuinely enough to start. The third thing is the simplest and the hardest. At some point tonight, before 10:38 p.m. or after, it doesn't need to be timed exactly, you start, not finish, not resolve everything neatly, just start. You say the sentence, you open the conversation. Venus-Pluto does the rest. Not as a figure of speech. The configuration tonight surfaces the real dynamic whether you planned for it or not. Your job isn't to control where it goes. Your job is to be the one who opened it, to be an active participant in what gets surfaced rather than someone it simply happened around. That's the whole thing. One sentence before afternoon ends. No rehearsing. Start the conversation tonight. It doesn't have to go perfectly. It almost certainly won't. Hard conversations rarely land cleanly in the moment. But perfect isn't what's available tonight. What's available is real. And real, in a relationship that's been running on a quiet imbalance, is worth a lot more than a comfortable version of fine. Venus-Pluto passed. The arrangement that's been sitting under the surface is visible now. Who holds ground, who adjusts, how it actually works. That's out. The conversation happened or it didn't. Either way, the version of you that was pretending not to notice is harder to return to. Tomorrow, a grand water trine completes. What tonight opened moves into softer ground. That's a genuinely different feeling than what today was. Subscribe and stay close. Tomorrow is part of this, not separate from it.